Welcome to Credit and Coffee. Today, I'm sharing the deeply personal story of how crushing medical debt forced us to surrender our cherished dream home, but ultimately revealed the true strength of our love in the quiet contentment of having less. It feels like a lifetime ago now, that morning chill still distinct in my memory, the one that used to bite at my cheeks as I waited for the automated garage door to rumble open, revealing the polished gleam of our sedan under the first blush of dawn. That house, our house, stood sentinel on a rise, its wide windows catching the nascent light, a silent testament to years of striving, of diligent savings, of calculated risks in the burgeoning tech world. My wife and I had poured ourselves into that ambition, meticulously planning every step, watching the investment portfolio grow with a quiet pride, tracking the stock market's capricious dance, celebrating each milestone with a simple meal, a shared bottle of wine. I remember the scent of fresh cut grass from the meticulously maintained lawn, the way the morning sun dappled through the old oak in the front yard, casting intricate patterns on the handcrafted porch swing, a small detail my wife had insisted upon, a gentle nod to a simpler, perhaps idealized, past. We had envisioned a life there, children's laughter echoing in its spacious rooms, holiday gatherings filling the air with warmth and scent of pine and roasted turkey. We had discussed everything, from the color of the nursery walls to the kind of antique books we'd line the study shelves with, the faint aroma of aged paper a comforting promise of quiet evenings. Our initial income was robust, bolstered by early investments in a promising tech startup where I was an original employee, the shares eventually turning into a significant sum when the company had its initial public offering. This windfall, combined with years of careful savings and my wife's own impressive income from her role as a senior architect, allowed us to pursue that dream home. We had scoured listings for months, rejected countless properties, until we found it, a craftsman-style house with solid bones, a wraparound porch, and enough land for a decent garden. The asking price was steep, a number that made my stomach flutter with a mix of excitement and apprehension, but our financial advisor, a calm, reassuring man with a penchant for conservative strategies, assured us it was within our means, especially with proper risk management and diversified investments. We managed to put down a substantial sum, almost half the value, making the monthly mortgage payments manageable, or so we calculated, leaving ample room in our budget for unexpected expenses. My wife, with her sensible head for figures, always ensured we maintained a healthy budget, meticulously tracking every expense, every bill, from the weekly grocery shop to the annual property taxes. She even convinced me to explore passive income streams, diversifying our financial holdings beyond just the stock market, though I remained a bit more skeptical, leaning towards tangible assets. We had excellent health insurance through our respective employers, a comprehensive plan that covered almost everything, or so we believed. The ink on the closing papers was barely dry when we held our first housewarming, the air thick with the joyful din of friends and family, the clinking of glasses, the aroma of a celebratory roast wafting from the kitchen. It was everything we had dreamed of, a tangible symbol of our hard work and shared future. The house felt alive that night, filled with the warmth of shared laughter and the promise of a lifetime of happiness, its sturdy walls seeming to hum with our collective joy. I remember standing on the wraparound porch, the cool evening air carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine, my arm around my wife's waist, looking out at the softly illuminated garden, feeling an almost overwhelming sense of peace and accomplishment. This was it, I thought, the culmination of all our efforts, the beginning of our forever. Yet, even in those early days of blissful occupancy, a subtle anxiety began to creep in, a low thrum beneath the surface of our contentment. The dream home, with its expansive rooms and manicured grounds, demanded constant attention, constant expense, a hungry maw that seemed to require endless feeding. Property taxes soared with each reassessment, their official-looking envelopes arriving with an almost aggressive regularity, each digit on the statement a silent blow. Utilities for such a large footprint were staggering, the monthly electricity bill alone capable of inducing a small gasp, especially during the extreme temperatures of summer and winter, as the air conditioning or heating struggled to keep the vast spaces comfortable. And unforeseen repairs always seemed to surface, like weeds in a carefully tended bed, unexpected and persistent. A leaky roof after an unexpected spring storm left a spreading stain on the ceiling of the guest bedroom, requiring immediate, costly intervention. A furnace that sputtered to life one bitter winter morning, belching cold air, meant an emergency call and another significant expense. The endless upkeep of the garden, the the pruning, the fertilizing, the constant battle against pests and disease, the need for a professional landscaper to maintain its pristine appearance, each was a drain not just on our finances, but on our time and emotional energy. I began to feel the subtle pressure of being house poor, a quiet hum beneath the surface of our affluent life, a constant, nagging worry that chipped away at my peace of mind. We owned the house, yes, a proud, imposing structure, but sometimes it felt like the house owned us, its demands dictating our choices, narrowing our options. The gilded cage, even then, was beginning to feel a little heavier than expected, its gleaming bars casting longer, more ominous shadows. I'd walk through the spacious rooms, the echo of my footsteps a lonely sound, and feel a pang of unease, a sense of being constantly observed, constantly judged by the very space we had worked so hard to acquire. The silent judgment of the perfect lawn next door, the freshly painted trim across the street, the meticulous displays of seasonal decor, all contributed to a suffocating pressure to maintain an outward facade of effortless prosperity. We'd try to keep up appearances in our affluent neighborhood, ensuring our lawn was as pristine as our neighbors, the edges neatly trimmed, the grass a vibrant, almost artificial green. Our cars were always gleaming, freshly washed, parked just so in the driveway. We contributed generously to community events, the silent auctions, the charity galas, ensuring our presence was noted, our participation unwavering. The quiet desperation of keeping up appearances was a subtle, persistent pressure, a performance we both unconsciously maintained, a constant act of pretending everything was perfectly fine, even as a creeping dread began to take root within me. I remember practicing casual smiles in the mirror before neighborhood gatherings, rehearsing responses to questions about our latest vacation or upcoming renovations, all the while knowing that our financial reality was far more precarious than it seemed. Then, a tremor. It started subtly, a persistent cough my wife couldn't shake, a dry, hacking sound that seemed to tear at her throat, a sound that grew more frequent, more alarming with each passing day. A fatigue that deepened with each passing week, not just the usual weariness from her demanding job, the kind that a good night's sleep or a weekend getaway could usually alleviate, but something more profound, more unsettling, a bone-deep exhaustion that seemed to sap her very essence. At first, we brushed it off as the stress of her demanding role, the late nights poring over blueprints, the constant pressure from her high-profile clients, the relentless deadlines, and the exacting standards of the architectural world. We made jokes about her needing a proper vacation, a long, uninterrupted break from the grind of urban planning, picturing her on a sun-drenched beach, the salt air revitalizing her. I remember her sitting across from me at the kitchen island one Tuesday morning, the steam rising from her coffee cup, blurring her face slightly, the soft clink of her spoon against the ceramic a fragile, lonely sound. Her eyes looked a little too distant, a little too tired, a shadow clinging to their depths, a hollowness that hadn't been there before. I watched her tracing patterns on the condensation on her glass of water, the rhythmic motion strangely disquieting, and a cold dread, faint as a whisper, settled in my gut, a premonition of something far more serious than mere exhaustion. Her skin, usually vibrant and full of life, had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality, and her usually quick wit was dulled, replaced by a quiet, almost eerie stillness. Doctor's appointments began, a slow, agonizing parade of anxious waits in sterile waiting rooms, the hushed rustle of magazines unread, their glossy pages mocking our deepening concern, the antiseptic scent clinging to our clothes, a constant clinical reminder of our burgeoning fear. The fluorescent lights hummed with an almost oppressive regularity, casting a pallor over everyone, amplifying the tension in the air. We sat holding hands, our fingers intertwined, a silent pact against the unknown. Then came the endless rounds of tests, the bewildering array of machines, the unnerving silence of her hand clutching mine as we listened to medical jargon we didn't fully grasp, the doctor's expressions growing increasingly grave with each passing consultation. The initial diagnosis was a punch to the gut. An aggressive, rare autoimmune condition that attacked without warning, a relentless thief stealing her energy, her vitality, her very breath, threatening to unravel the very fabric of her existence. It was a cruel irony, a hidden vulnerability in a life we had meticulously engineered for security, a flaw in our otherwise perfectly constructed world. The treatments were immediate, intensive, and staggeringly expensive. Our comprehensive health insurance, robust as it seemed on paper with its impressive array of covered services, had its limits, its hidden exclusions, its carefully worded caveats. Deductibles quickly became an immediate, substantial outflow of cash. Copays for specialists, oncologists, immunologists, neurologists became a daily reality. experimental treatments not fully covered by our plan, offered as a last resort, quickly depleted our reserves. The constant need for second opinions, for consultations with leading experts in different states, added layers of travel and accommodation costs. The frequent hospital stays, with their daily charges, the specialized medications, the round-the-clock nursing care, the costs started to pile up like unread mail on a neglected entryway table, each envelope a fresh stab of fear, a new iteration of the same overwhelming number. We started dipping into our emergency savings, a carefully built buffer meant for a very different kind of crisis, for a job loss or a natural disaster, not for a relentless, insidious illness. Then came the painful decision to liquidate portions of our investment portfolio, watching those meticulously cultivated stocks diminish with each medical emergency, each desperate need for funding. The stock market, usually a source of quiet confidence, of a steady, almost imperceptible growth, now felt like a predatory beast, its ups and downs directly impacting our ability to keep her treatments going, to literally buy her more time, more comfort, to hold off the inevitable. I remember lying awake at night, the oppressive silence of the big house amplifying the frantic pounding of my heart, staring at the intricate patterns of the plaster ceiling, the shadows cast by the moon playing tricks on my tired eyes. I mentally calculated the remaining balance, the projected costs, the dwindling safety net, trying to find a solution, a loophole, a way out of the ever-tightening financial noose. Each rustle of the leaves outside our window, each distant siren, felt like a drumbeat of impending doom, a relentless march towards an uncertain future. The anxiety of being house poor was no longer a dull throb. It became a searing pain, a constant pressure beneath my ribs, a weight I carried with every waking breath, a suffocating cloak of dread. Our dream home, once a beacon of security, a symbol of everything we had achieved, began to feel like a gilded cage, its spacious rooms echoing with unspoken fears, its luxurious finishes mocking our precarious reality, a constant reminder of how far we had fallen, how fragile our meticulously constructed world truly was. The pristine marble countertops seemed to glint with a cold indifference, the expensive art on the walls felt like an ironic joke, and the sheer volume of space, once so comforting, now felt empty, cavernous, amplifying our solitude. The constant anxiety of inflation and rising costs also gnawed at me, a relentless, insidious pressure that never eased. Every trip to the supermarket, the bright fluorescent lights overhead illuminating the grim reality of soaring prices, felt like a small, yet significant, subtraction from our dwindling medical fund. Every fuel refill, the smell of gasoline mixing with my growing dread, became another painful calculation. The world seemed to conspire against us, turning everyday necessities into hidden luxuries we could barely afford, forcing us to scrutinize every item on the grocery list, to opt for the cheaper brands, the generic labels, a small, humiliating surrender, a silent acknowledgement of our changing circumstances. I started to notice the worn edges on my own clothes, the subtle fraying of cuffs, a small tear in the sole of my shoe, things I would have dismissed months before, now magnified into symbols of our quiet decline. My job, a mid-level management position at a well-established tech company, had once felt like a secure foundation, offering a steady income and benefits, a career path stretching confidently into the future. I'd worked there for years, putting in the hours, climbing the ladder with careful precision, contributing to a retirement fund that felt solid, a comfortable cushion for our golden years, a guaranteed safety net. But the pressure mounted. The sleepless nights spent worrying about medical bills, the endless hospital visits, the emotional drain of seeing my wife suffer, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by pain and exhaustion, all began to take their toll. My focus at work splintered, my usually meticulous attention to detail eroded by the constant internal noise of worry. I started taking on extra projects, volunteering for weekend shifts, anything to supplement our income, driven by the gnawing fear of medical bills, of being unable to provide, of watching my wife slip away simply because we couldn't afford the next treatment. The sleep deprivation made me irritable, my focus fragmented, my usually keen problem-solving skills dulled by constant stress. I remember a particularly tense meeting with my boss, his eyes sharp, assessing, his gaze lingering on me a moment too long. His words were clipped, questioning my recent performance, the missed deadlines, the uncharacteristic errors in my reports, the sense of urgency he expected now absent from my demeanor. The air in the conference room felt thick, heavy with unspoken judgment, the scent of stale coffee and my own desperation hanging heavy in the air. I knew I was slipping, struggling to maintain the facade of normalcy, but the sheer weight of what was happening at home was crushing me, stealing my capacity to pretend everything was fine, to even function adequately. Each morning, forcing a smile, I would step into the office, the bright, artificial lights feeling like an interrogation, my every move scrutinized, my every falter noted. One dreary Tuesday, the sky outside matching the grayness in my soul, after a particularly grueling round of treatments for my wife that left her frail and depleted, her body trembling with exhaustion, I received the terse, impersonal call to come into the CEO's office. The polished veneer of the executive floor, usually a source of quiet pride, a symbol of ambition realized, now felt cold, sterile, menacing, reflecting my own growing dread, each step on the plush carpet feeling heavier than the last. My boss was already there, his face unreadable, his gaze fixed on some point beyond my shoulder, avoiding my eyes. The CEO, a man I'd admired for his ruthless efficiency, for his vision that had driven the startup to its current success, delivered the news without preamble, his voice devoid of emotion, a flat, almost robotic tone. We're restructuring. We need someone who can maintain the pace, the level of innovation we expect. Your services are no longer required. I got fired, just like that. The words hung in the air, heavy, final, shattering my sense of security, pulverizing the last vestiges of my professional identity. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch, as if I'd plummeted from a great height, a cold wave of nausea washing over me. The severance package was decent, a temporary bandage, a small financial buffer that offered a fleeting comfort against the gaping wound of job loss, but it was fleeting. The health insurance, the very lifeline we desperately needed, intricately tied to my employment, would soon expire, leaving us vulnerable, exposed, adrift in a sea of medical uncertainty. Panic, cold and sharp, coiled in my gut, a venomous snake tightening its grip, its fangs sinking deep. How would we manage now? The thought of searching for a new job, of crafting resumes, of enduring endless interviews, of presenting a confident, capable facade, felt utterly overwhelming in the face of my wife's deteriorating health and our escalating debt. Each breath felt like an effort, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. In my desperation, my judgment clouded by fear and exhaustion, by the relentless pressure to provide, I made some rash, uncharacteristic decisions, abandoning the caution that had always been my financial bedrock. I'd always been a cautious investor, favoring blue-chip stocks and diversified portfolios, a believer in slow, steady growth and robust risk management, scoffing at get-rich-quick schemes. But with the clock ticking, the medical bills piling up, their jagged edges sharp against my dwindling hope, and the threat of bankruptcy looming, a dark cloud on the horizon, I started looking for a quicker fix, a miraculous escape, a Hail Mary pass. A friend, one who had always seemed to possess an uncanny knack for spotting trends, for being ahead of the curve, for an almost intuitive understanding of market shifts, convinced me to put a significant chunk of our remaining capital into a nascent cryptocurrency venture. He spoke with such conviction about Bitcoin, about the future of decentralized finance, about the meteoric rise of startups in this new frontier, his eyes gleaming with an almost messianic fervor, showing me stories of overnight millionaires, of people who had turned meager investments into unimaginable fortunes. He showed me intricate charts, projected stratospheric returns, talked about passive income generated overnight, a dream of instant wealth that appealed to my increasingly desperate, vulnerable state, a siren song promising salvation. Against my better judgment, against my wife's quiet warnings, her gentle tugs on my sleeve to be careful, her soft, questioning gaze, I dove in, chasing the delusion of a miraculous recovery, a sudden windfall that would make everything right again, that would erase all our financial woes, that would bring back the life we once had. I remember the feverish excitement of watching the numbers on my screen, the brief, exhilarating spikes, the delusion that I was a genius, that I had found the solution, that I was on the cusp of turning everything around, the sweet taste of impending victory on my tongue. The adrenaline surged through my veins, masking the fear, replacing it with a reckless optimism. Then came the inevitable crash. A swift, brutal collapse in the market, a sudden, precipitous drop that wiped out a significant portion of what little we had left, leaving behind a digital wasteland of zeros, a cruel, mocking testament to my folly. The screen, once a source of exhilarating possibility, now glared back at me with its stark, unyielding red numbers, a digital dagger to my heart. The regret of following bad investment advice from a friend was a bitter pill to swallow, its acrid taste filling my mouth, tinged with a deep sense of shame and self-recrimination. I had not only failed to protect us, failed to be the provider, the rock, but I had actively worsened our situation, squandering our last reserves in a desperate gamble, betting everything on a phantom future. I had in a way betrayed my wife's trust, not through malice, but through a misguided, desperate attempt to save us, an act of love twisted into an act of self-destruction. The marital strain from this secret debt, this risky investment, was immense, a silent chasm opening between us. I tried to hide the full extent of the loss from her, to shield her from the added burden, to protect her from the pain of my failure, but she saw the worry etched on my face, the new, deeper lines around my eyes that seemed to have materialized overnight, the way my hands trembled when I poured my morning coffee, rattling the ceramic mug against the saucer, the way I flinched at the sound of the mailbox opening, each thud a potential harbinger of another bill. She knew. She always knew, her perception sharpened by her own suffering, her empathy unwavering even in her weakness. The unspoken accusation hung between us, a heavy curtain in the usually sunlit rooms, creating a chill that even the warmest fire couldn't dispel, a silence more deafening than any argument. There were nights when I could hear her crying softly from the spare bedroom where she'd moved for better sleep during her recovery, the sound of faint, almost imperceptible tremor through the walls, and the guilt was a physical weight on my chest, pinning me to the mattress, suffocating me with its bitter taste, drowning me in self-loathing. Each tear she shed felt like a fresh indictment. The family business, my father's legacy, a small but reputable manufacturing company that had sustained our family for generations, a symbol of steady, dependable work, had also been struggling for years, slowly decaying from the inside out. He'd resisted modernization, clinging to outdated methods, refusing to adapt to new technologies, convinced that the old ways were best, even as the world moved on without him. He watched as larger, more agile competitors chipped away at his market share, slowly but surely driving his once thriving enterprise into the ground, a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts. The slow decline of a family business was painful to watch, a steady erosion of something I'd always thought would be a constant, a bedrock, a source of stability I could always fall back on. It was another source of quiet stress, another burden I felt, another piece of my foundation crumbling. My student loans, a relic from my younger days, an investment in my future that now seemed laughably ironic, a cruel joke played by my past self, also chose that precise moment to rear their ugly heads, demanding attention, demanding payment. I'd been diligently paying them off for years, a small, consistent deduction from my paycheck, but the interest rates were unforgiving, and suddenly they felt like another lead weight dragging us down, an inescapable financial anchor pulling us deeper into the abyss. We were the sandwich generation, caught between our ailing parents and our own spiraling crisis, feeling the pressure from all sides, a crushing weight of responsibility that threatened to flatten us. My father needed assistance with his medical care too, a milder but chronic condition requiring constant funds we barely had, adding another layer of obligation to our already impossible situation. We lived in a perpetual state of financial triage, constantly deciding which urgent need to address, which bill to delay, which sacrifice to make. We had always tried to keep up appearances in our affluent neighborhood, attending the community barbecues with forced smiles, their plastic sheen barely concealing the raw pain beneath, exchanging pleasantries with neighbors whose lives seemed effortlessly perfect, their discussions of private schools and exotic vacations a stark contrast to our grim reality, their casual mentions of luxury a fresh sting. The quiet desperation of keeping up appearances was exhausting, a draining charade that stole what little energy I had left. I'd nod and smile, feigning interest, pretending our world wasn't crumbling beneath our feet, while inside I was screaming, feeling a hollow despair that threatened to consume me, a bitter taste in my mouth each time I forced a pleasantry. Professional jealousy from a former colleague, who had always resented my promotion and swift rise, seeing it as an affront to his own perceived superiority, also intensified during this period. He'd subtly spread rumors, undermining my reputation, making it harder for me to find new employment, subtly sabotaging my networking attempts with whispered asides and thinly veiled criticisms, turning potential opportunities into dead ends. The financial comparison poisoning friendships was something I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, every casual conversation about vacation plans, luxury renovations, or new car purchases felt like a brutal reminder of our own precipitous fall, a fresh wound to my already battered pride. The instability of a midlife career change, once an exciting prospect, a chance to pivot and reinvent myself, to explore new passions, now felt like a terrifying gamble I couldn't afford to lose, a perilous tightrope walk over an abyss of debt. I took a job, a soul-crushing job at a large call center, answering endless queries about mundane technical issues, troubleshooting problems for strangers I'd never meet, my voice flat, robotic, drained of all emotion. The fluorescent lights hummed incessantly, a dull, brain-numbing drone. The cubicle walls felt like a prison, their beige surfaces closing in on me, and the relentless stream of complaints eroded my spirit, chipping away at my humanity, leaving me feeling hollowed out. The pay was a fraction of what I'd earned before, the hours long and monotonous, the work utterly devoid of meaning or challenge, a stark contrast to the intellectual stimulation I once craved. The psychological weight of golden handcuffs was now reversed. I wasn't trapped by a high salary in a life I disliked, but by a desperate, crushing need for any salary, no matter how low, to keep us afloat, to pay the next medical bill, the next utility statement, to simply exist. The moral compromises I sometimes had to make, pushing services customers didn't genuinely need, recommending upgrades that offered marginal benefit but boosted my sales numbers, left a bitter taste in my mouth, a heavy knot of shame in my stomach. But the alternative, the thought of my wife's treatments being delayed, was unthinkable. Each sales pitch felt like a small act of betrayal, a chipping away at my own integrity, all for the sake of survival. The bills kept coming, relentless, unforgiving, accumulating in a neat stack on the kitchen counter, each one a fresh assault, a reminder of our dwindling resources. I remember standing in the kitchen, the sunlight, once a comforting presence, now felt harsh, unforgiving, exposing every dust mot, every tiny crack in the veneer of our once perfect life, reflecting the cracks in our souls. My wife, pale and thin, leaning against the cold marble countertop, her frame fragile, her strength sapped, but her eyes burning with an unshakable resolve, a quiet, fierce determination. Her voice, though soft, was firm, decisive, cutting through the haze of my despair. "We need to sell the house," she said, her eyes meeting mine, filled with a clarity and strength that both broke and strengthened me, a recognition of our shared reality, a brave acknowledgement of defeat. It wasn't a question, it was an affirmation of our stark truth, an acceptance of defeat, and a brave, terrifying step towards a new, unknown path. The words felt like a physical blow, a rending of something vital, a tearing away of a part of ourselves, yet also, paradoxically, a profound release, a lifting of an unbearable weight, a breath of air after suffocating for so long. The dream home, the tangible symbol of everything we had striven for, had become an unbearable burden, an anchor dragging us down, threatening to drown us both. It was trapping us, stifling us, slowly suffocating the very love it was meant to shelter, the very life it was meant to enhance. We spent weeks in a fog, a daze of disbelief and grief, a surreal journey through our own past, sorting through memories, meticulously packing boxes filled with the detritus of a life we had so carefully and lovingly built. Each item, each photograph, each piece of furniture felt heavy with sentiment, a reminder of forgotten dreams, of aspirations that now seemed naive, almost foolish in their grandeur, a poignant ghost of what once was. I remember dusting off an old framed photo of us, taken on the day we closed on the house, our faces beaming with an innocent joy, a wide-eyed optimism that now felt miles, lifetimes, away, a memory that stung with a bittersweet ache. The scent of packing tape and cardboard filled the air, a melancholic perfume that would forever be associated with that painful period of letting go. The open house dates were a blur of strangers walking through our intimate spaces, their curious, appraising gazes stripping away the last vestiges of our privacy, dissecting our past, judging our present, their footsteps echoing through rooms that once held our most cherished moments. Each raised eyebrow, each whispered comment about the dated kitchen or the overly personal decor felt like a judgment, a slow, clinical dissection of our failure, our inability to hold onto the dream. The quiet desperation, the underlying current of our despair, was palpable even to them, I imagined, radiating from us like a heat haze, clinging to the very air. We accepted an offer far below what we had once envisioned, a number that stung with the bitterness of forced compromise, a final capitulation, but it was enough to clear the crushing medical debt and give us a small, fragile buffer, a sliver of hope for a fresh start. The day we signed the papers was strangely anticlimactic, devoid of grand emotions, just a profound weariness, a hollow ache in our chests, a quiet surrender. The pen felt heavy in my hand, each stroke of the signature a quiet surrender, a turning of a page to an unknown chapter. We drove away from that house for the last time, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, casting long shadows that mirrored the ones stretching out behind us, a somber farewell. I glanced in the rearview mirror, watching it recede, becoming smaller and smaller, until it was just another building on the horizon, swallowed by the vastness of the past, indistinguishable from any other. My wife reached across the console, her hand finding mine, her touch a silent promise, an anchor in the storm, a tangible connection to our shared future, a warmth that spread through me. We moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, a place of beige walls, utilitarian carpets that smelled faintly of cleaning solution, and the constant, inescapable hum of city life outside our window, a ceaseless, low thrum. The contrast was stark, almost jarring, a sudden descent from spacious grandeur to compact practicality. No sprawling garden, just a tiny balcony large enough for a single potted basil plant, its green leaves a defiant splash of life, a resilient symbol of hope. No grand entrance, just a narrow hallway that barely accommodated our meager belongings, the boxes stacked precariously, a temporary labyrinth. No quiet solitude, just the faint sounds of our neighbors' lives bleeding through the thin walls, their distant music, the murmur of their conversations, the occasional baby's cry, a constant reminder of our shared humanity, our proximity. For weeks, the silence of the smaller space, the absence of our old home's comforting vastness, felt oppressive, a constant reminder of what we had lost, a tangible manifestation of our failure, a lingering ghost. I missed the distinct creak of the old oak floorboards beneath my feet, a sound that had been a part of my daily rhythm, the way the light shifted in the living room at noon, casting geometric patterns on the Persian rug, the vastness of the empty sky scene from our bedroom window, unobscured by other buildings. The everyday scenes were now framed by different walls, smaller, closer, more intimate, forcing us into a proximity that was both challenging and, ultimately, profoundly healing, stripping away the need for pretense. Our meals, once elaborate affairs cooked in a gourmet kitchen, became simpler, more focused on nourishment than presentation, often eaten at a small, wobbly table, its cheap laminate surface a stark contrast to our former dining room. We learned to make do with less, to find beauty and contentment in the mundane, in the simplicity of shared tasks, washing dishes together, folding laundry, the quiet rhythm of domestic life. We walked more, exploring the local park, its worn paths and familiar benches, discovering hidden coffee shops with chipped mugs and comforting aromas of freshly ground beans, the steam rising from our inexpensive brews, warming our hands. My wife's recovery was slow, arduous, punctuated by good days of unexpected energy and bad days of profound exhaustion. But in this smaller, less demanding environment, free from the crushing financial anxiety and the relentless pressure of maintaining a certain lifestyle, she seemed to breathe easier, her color slowly returning, a gentle flush to her cheeks. The weight had been lifted, replaced by a different kind of freedom, a quiet liberation, a sense of lightness in our steps. We started spending our evenings reading aloud to each other, a simple pleasure we'd forgotten in the relentless rush of our former lives, our voices weaving stories in the small living room, the words a gentle balm. We played board games, laughed at our clumsy attempts at new, budget-friendly recipes, finding joy in the small victories, and talked for hours, really talked about everything and nothing, rediscovering the easy rhythm of our early courtship, the intimacy of shared thoughts and dreams, a deeper connection forged in shared hardship. I found a new job, a less prestigious one, certainly not the career I had once envisioned, but one that paid the bills, offered a steady income, and crucially allowed for a healthier work-life balance, a quiet relief. It wasn't my dream career, but it wasn't soul-crushing either. It was honest work, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose beyond material gain, a dignity in providing. We developed new routines, morning walks through the park, stopping at the local bakery for fresh bread, the familiar scent of yeast and sugar a comforting balm against the lingering anxieties, a simple ritual that grounded us. We learned to budget meticulously, not out of desperation this time, but out of a newfound appreciation for every penny earned, for the security it offered, for the freedom it bought, a conscious act of responsible living. The burden of student loans, while still present, felt manageable now, a part of the background hum of our new life, not a screaming alarm, but a quiet reminder of lessons learned. We started noticing the small joys, the way the sun caught the edge of the basil leaf on the balcony, its vibrant green a symbol of resilience, the sound of rain drumming rhythmically on the window pane, a comforting lullaby, the warmth of a shared blanket on a cool evening, the quiet satisfaction of a well-tended home, however small. These were the moments of support, the quiet affirmations of our bond, the everyday miracles we had once overlooked, now magnified in their simplicity. Our love, once tested by ambition, and then fractured by fear and financial ruin, had been reforged in the crucible of adversity. It was no longer about the size of our house or the zeros in our bank account. It was about the unwavering presence of her hand in mine, the shared laughter over a simple meal, the comfort of her head on my shoulder as we watched the city lights flicker outside our window, 1,000 tiny stars reflecting a quieter, more profound universe, a universe where true wealth resided not in possessions but in connection. The quiet harbor of Les, it turned out, was not a place of deprivation, but a sanctuary, a haven where true values could finally emerge, unclouded by materialism, a place where our love could truly flourish. We had lost the grand house, the outward symbols of success, the illusion of effortless perfection, but we had gained something far more precious, an unbreakable love, a profound contentment with what we truly had, a resilience forged in fire, and a clear, unshakable understanding of what truly mattered in this fleeting existence. The memory of the dream home still brings a soft pang of nostalgia, a gentle bittersweetness, a faint echo of what once was, a beautiful dream that served its purpose, but it no longer carries the crushing weight of failure. It was a lesson, a harsh one, a necessary one that stripped away the superfluous, the superficial, and revealed the enduring, indestructible strength of us together. We are survivors, learning to be content with our quiet, less flashy life, finding wealth not in possessions, not in the relentless pursuit of more, but in each other, in the simple truth of our shared existence, in the warmth of our small, beige-walled home, in the quiet, steady beat of our intertwined hearts. What do you think defines true wealth in your life? Have you ever found unexpected peace in letting go of a long-held dream? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If this narrative resonated with you, please give it a like, share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it, and subscribe for more stories of life's complex journeys. And as always, what's one small joy you've savored this week?